Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center, and this is a podcast dedicated to owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses, helping the owners actually build what I refer to as the premier accounting firm in their area, offering quality services and getting paid what they're worth. With this, we have on the show each and every week guests, experts in their own right as to helping us do things that we need to be working on in our business to actually grow and sustain what it is we offer. So this is going to be an excellent episode. I'm pleased to have on the show Amy Vetter. Amy happens to be someone I met at a conference. She is the CEO of the B3 Method Institute and B3 Yoga, which provide ongoing learning to help people in all industries and career levels to achieve their desired potential in work and life. Amy is a transformative keynote speaker, consultant, board member, author, and host of the podcast Breaking Beliefs. As the creator of B3 Methods for Business, Balance, and Bliss, Amy has inspired thousands of people, hundreds of events on the mindfulness, use of technology, change management, connected leadership, mindfulness in the workplace, and work-life balance. So Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be really fun. I quite enjoyed the things that you were sharing in the presentation that you had done, but I want to get into a variety of things here that I think my listeners will appreciate. First of all, as it relates to business, clearly being a thought leader, an influencer in so many rights, it begs the question of what got you here. Give us a little bit of a background story to your evolution into this.
Yeah, it's been many pivots in my road for sure. So depends how far you want to go back, but I originally, growing up was very much into music and art. That was where I spent most of my time, but I also spent time working in my mom's business, who had maid services in multiple cities. So I grew up kind of seeing the business side and the creative side. And I also had a grandfather that was a CPA. So he was a CPA in the 1930s and always heard about being a CPA and how much it was a safe and secure career and so forth. And fast forward, my mom lost her business through a number of things that happened in the economy. And that really pivoted my path to make sure I went the CPA route versus the creative route, because I knew it was a safe and secure career. It was said many times. And I went down that path, started at KPMG in audit, did internal audits, and also was a partner in a CPA firm running small business services, which is now called CAS. At the time, it really wasn't a thing. So it was outsourced bookkeeping, QuickBooks consulting, system implementation, controllership. And eventually just getting so involved with the accounting technology, I loved it. I got more and more involved with Intuit and was doing projects with them, and eventually went to work for them running their accountant program. And then I went to Intact and Xero and ran Xero's accountant program globally. And about 6 years ago, I started my own business called the B3 Method Institute, because I really, being a CPA myself, but also working with so many CPAs over my career, have felt it was a big need in this profession, even before COVID, of just changing the culture in these firms and making the work itself more enjoyable, so people aren't feeling burnt out and they're able to live their purpose of why they went into business in the first place. So that's where the B3 method comes in. And all the things we do at the B3 Method Institute.
I'm loving this. I'm sure many of the people that are listening can really relate to the story you're sharing. And I want to just back up a little bit before we kind of move forward. You have an interesting career path. Clearly at a corporate level, you were very, very, very successful, having the CPA, the partnership, working at Intuit, Xero, and so forth. What caused you to want to break off and be your own boss, be an entrepreneur, start your business? I always find that as a transformative thing that a lot of people experience, and not everyone is an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I would say not everybody is fit to be an entrepreneur, and even entrepreneurs sometimes aren't fit to be entrepreneurs. I was definitely born to be an entrepreneur. I do love the corporate side too. So I'm always in conflict with myself as well. But going back to my creative side growing up, I think entrepreneurship allows me to bring in that creativity or vision that I have. But, definitely being an entrepreneur is for the thick skinned, because there's so many trials and tribulations, and you truly have to believe in what you're doing and why you're doing it, and keep grounding yourself in why you do it, as you go through the ups and downs of business. But, growing up, like I said, my grandfather was a CPA, my grandmother was an antique art store owner. My mom owned businesses. So I started working my mom's business when I was 12, and I would get dropped off, from the bus and go right into her office. And she would also take me to, networking events and political events around town. And I really got the excitement of business very young. And I was also very fortunate at the same time that I was very successful as a violin and viola player
Oh,
growing
wow.
up.
Yeah.
And so I was in the Cincinnati Youth Symphony Orchestra. And as part of that, you are paired for one of the concerts every year with the Cincinnati Symphony. And so you really got a flavor of what life would be like if you went into music professionally versus business. And I definitely, that electrified feeling that you get from being, for those that feel that when they're an entrepreneur, that's something that's never left me. But the corporate side of me definitely helps that I can have that strategic side. And that's why I do so much corporate advisory work, because I get what they're doing. It's just, for me, the freedom of being an entrepreneur is great too. A lot of sacrifices.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So no, I'm loving this because I think you're equating very well some of the pluses, the positives of each. In the corporate world, I would dare say that there's a lot of benefit knowing that there's a wall and a ladder to climb up that wall.
And
And
a
so it's nice to
salary.
have that. And well, that's right. It's the salary, it's the budget, it's the fact that you've got actually revenue that you can utilize towards the growth of the business. You also have oftentimes a team, a collaborative environment. When you're an entrepreneur, especially starting off, you start to sacrifice a lot of that cohesive team environment, that collaboration that you might be used to. And clearly the funds are lacking initially. And then with regards to the entrepreneurship, not only do you get to build the wall, you get to build the ladder as you put it on the wall you want it to be. So there's a lot of pluses here in each side. And clearly you've embraced the entrepreneur side. So now that begs the question, B3 Method or Institute, you created that because I'm sure you saw something missing. What was it that you saw that was missing that you were trying to address?
Well, it was missing for me. And then so many people, a lot of times when we talk about, the pipeline issue and all of these things that are happening in the profession, I don't believe there was ever not an issue. I just don't think our generation was acting on it like this generation does. So, and I would say this generation is more savvy as far as the information that they have and can have access to that we did not have access to when we were going to college and, trying to figure out what we were going to do. So, I definitely had, from what I heard about my grandfather being a CPA, I had a vision of what I thought a CPA was. And really to put it even in more context, my grandfather was an immigrant. He lived in an immigrant neighborhood. So, and the CPA profession was very different before the 50s,
Yep.
And he died in the 1970s. So the profession changed so much as far as regulation, but the things I heard was the relationships and the help that he was creating for that community, right? So, immigrants were lifting each other up. And, stories I'd hear is like, my mom would get a new fur coat every year from one of his clients. So that was probably like instead of getting paid, right? Or he'd get symphony tickets, instead of getting paid. So it was just a different, time in the world. And so I had this vision of a very collaborative environment.
I like that word.
When I started in accounting, it was shocking for me because it was not what I had pictured at all. It was very siloed, a lot of hours by yourself. And, I am definitely an extroverted person. And that's why I went I did do a stint in tax and I went into audit. It wasn't until and this is what's interesting too. My son's actually, both of my sons are in college, but my younger son all of a sudden has an interest in accounting. And I did not push him one way or the other, but it's been interesting hearing what the students say to each other about accounting. And this is what happened to me too, is like you hear all the students telling you, oh, you must do audit or tax and internal audits, that's not a good start, or, these other pathways. So I followed what every student was telling you to do. It wasn't until I got into internal audit that I was like, this is why I went into accounting, because it was more consultative. It was, you're learning the operations of I love being in the business, seeing it operate, and then trying to find the fixes. Not everybody loves that. Right. And so that's really what turned into client advisory services was my audit background, except they actually want your opinion. But that feeling of that there's got to be a better way. Like I so believe in this profession and the work that we do it is the language of business. Like businesses cannot translate what they're doing. Entrepreneurs cannot translate what they're doing without an accountant that is involved. But it is very hard to get, even myself trying to hire accountants, very hard to get an accountant to really be involved, like to care, to want to learn, to want to know, to pay attention. And I have a book that I wrote on this about creating a client advisory practice, but I call it Becoming a Cherished Advisor. And I created that term because I feel like you have to earn being cherished. We know we're trusted, and that's like table stakes. We should be with the information that we have, but cherished is a whole nother level because that means you're valued. That means they can't imagine not having you as a part of their business because of the advice that you're giving and that it is a collaborative relationship. So I believe that is so important. And then the second thing, besides the work that we do in the relationships, but it's also what I have found over time is in the accounting profession where we are good at focusing if a client's happy, but we're not necessarily focused on, are the employees happy? Are the staff happy? And then we're like, how did this happen? Well, because we haven't been focused on it. So just that same care needs to happen internally. And my own journey, starting yoga in my early 30s, really changed me a lot. And I started realizing how taking some of these practices right into the workplace can change each person at their own pace, and really understand themselves better. And I just believe there could be a better way. So that's where I spun off the B3 method. Really in that change management process is we have this business side, but we also have to balance it. And the balance being mindfulness and collaboration techniques that we have naturally to us if we unlock them, in order to offset the business stressors we have and everything else in order to create bliss. And bliss is the maintenance of happiness. And rather than looking outside for happiness, how do you find it internally?
Yeah. Before we get into your method, I want to back up just a little bit here, just to hit on a few things that really resonated with me that I would like to draw attention to for my listeners. First of all, I liked how you were referring to this as a collaborative relationship that the accountant is having with the business. The business owner is obviously looking for that cherished relationship, as you mentioned. And I liked one of the things that you said where the accountant should be getting into the business operations, into the internal workings of the business. And for me, that's akin to being a doctor for a business. Just like we have for our personal lives, doctors that may, as surgeons, get into our insides and be involved with the intricacies of what's making our body tick. We do the same things for the business owner, and it needs a bedside manner. We need to have this collaborative relationship with our business owners, with our clients that they cherish, because we are engaged enough that they feel loved, heard, appreciated. But as we get into the internal operations of the business, we've got to remember that just as sensitive every organ in our body is, all those operation things that make up a company are sensitive as well. So as we're dealing with cash flow and culture and these things, we can't just arbitrarily say to the business owner, change or fix this thing that is so integral to the processes going on in the company. There is a massaging, kind of a rehab element that's going on as we mold the business and evolve with our clients as they take their business to that whole next level, as they implement various things that we may be discussing with them. So I'm really liking where this is going. And the method that you brought up, I know you just shared the three things. I just want to dive a little deeper into each of them. The three happen to be business, balance, and bliss. You've already said those. Business, are you referring to the business of our own company? Is that what we're talking about there?
Yeah, and it's the stressors. And I just want to go, before we get too far into that, but I want to talk a little bit about what you just said, because I think this is a really important point to stress, is that as we grow in our career, we become more and more expert in the work that we're doing. And many times a client comes to us with an issue and we're like, here's the answer. Here's the answer. And just like if you go to a doctor and the doctor doesn't pay attention to you, and you're like, I know there's something more wrong with me, but they're not asking me questions. They're just assuming they know the answer. You get frustrated when you leave, right? You're like, that was just a waste of time.
Especially when they prescribe something that's addressing one of the symptoms,
Right.
but not the cause of the problem. Yes.
Exactly. And so one of the, I remember this, this was a while back when I was married, but my ex-husband had this condition that we didn't know what it was. And that's what was happening, is the doctors were just prescribing on the symptoms he was having. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And finally, we got recommended to go to the Mayo Clinic. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but it is a totally different experience with doctors. And every doctor you meet with is like with you for like 30 minutes to an hour. They're asking a lot of questions. But I remember in one of the sessions with the doctors, he was asking so many questions and I was looking at him and I'm like, I know he knows the answer. But he like wouldn't say the answer. And I just thought it was so important because he kept asking and asking and asking to make sure he wasn't missing one little thing before he made his diagnosis. And I think we get away from that because we get so rushed. And when we talk about like the business side of the B3 method, what I see with my clients is they don't charge enough. They're not right sizing their clients. They're not doing the right client acceptance. So what happens is your capacity is overloaded. And so you're not spending that kind of time to go in detail and really try to answer those kinds of questions, or ask those kinds of questions to get to what is the actual problem, not the symptom of the problem that you're hearing, because you're just like, I just got to get this done. I just got to get this done. And the balance side of my equation is exactly that, is these mindfulness techniques of how do I make sure to give myself space and really get present with people when I'm in those conversations, be asking the right questions and be there for them, not have my preconceived notions or feelings or thoughts before I walk into something. Is that I'm really present in that present moment, in the now, and really trying to spend the time to uncover if there were other issues in the operations besides what I'm seeing in the financials, and talking to other people in the business too, so that you can get your arms around things and make sure that you're giving the right advice.
I'm loving this. To be an advisor, we have to be more than just looking at the financial numbers. We've got to get to know the business operations and know, if we can, the players that are involved in the clients that we service. And I'm enjoying this conversation from a medical tangent, kind of that per se, because I've often referred to the accounting profession as being business first responders.
Mm-hmm.
More often, just like with the medical profession, I mean, we don't go to our doctors proactively. Typically, there's a problem, and then that's when we go see the doctor. Well, likewise with the accounting profession, we're typically not just sought after when things are going well. It's when things start to unravel for the client that the business owner reaches out to the accounting professional and says, I need help. I've got a cash flow problem and so forth. I need to raise capital. And all of a sudden, what's happening is we're able to triage the moment. And if we're asking the right questions and diving deeper, we can get into not just the symptoms that are obvious that the customer's perhaps experiencing, but we can get into what the client is actually experiencing that are the causes. And so I'm loving this analogy as you're drawing it up, because they are, as you're mentioning in your methods, the three things: business, balance, and bliss. The business stresses that the client is experiencing is what we're able to address here. So this is wonderful. So let's now go to balance. With regards to balance, that's a word that I tend to try to avoid. I don't think there is such a thing as work-life balance. So where are you going to go with balance?
Mm-hmm. So and in that sense, I call it work-life harmony for that reason, is because our life ebbs and flows, and it's how you incorporate it into your life. And you need the balance in order to detach from your present situation. So we have all these tools inside of us if we choose to practice them. And one of the things that I look at, I call it your human toolbox, that you can pull from when you need it to offset stressors or to get yourself in the right mindset or to get present. But one of the things I found over time as well is these tools and techniques are much like insurance, that when you need insurance, you can't get it, right? So it's the same thing with this, is when you're in the moments of stress and you haven't practiced techniques like this, it's very hard to get to the mindset to even learn it because you're in a stress place. But what I found over time is, because I practice this in my life, when I've been at my heaviest stress times, I click into these practices without even realizing I'm doing it, because it's become a part of who I am. Or I'm aware when I'm feeling off, or when I'm distracted, or when I'm showing up frustrated, and that's not my intention to show up that way. But I will question myself instead of, our natural human reaction is to blame the outside instead of, what could I have done differently? What in that situation to have changed the outcome? And that's what these tools allow you to do, is become the researcher of yourself, so that you are not making someone feel like they're unimportant when you don't intend for them to feel like they're unimportant or rushed, or any of those things. That you're really thinking about the things that you need to do in our own accountability to make sure that the energy you create is contagious, and is a good energy for the people around you. So we're not going to be perfect every day. I am not perfect every day, but at least I can recognize when I'm off, or when I'm stressed, or that I didn't give something enough time and attention because I was forcing too many things into my day. And then that showed up in ways that I didn't want it, to result in, with people that I work with, or could be with clients, whatever it is.
I'm really liking this, because I think everyone needs to consider what you're sharing. And obviously, as my listeners are hearing this, I think this applies to employees and relationships that we're in, because what you're talking about is we can't really choose the various things that are affecting us in our lives, the situations
Right.
that we're in, but we can choose the responses that we're having, the way we're showing up, whether or not we're present. These are things that we need to be more conscious of and more, I think, deliberate in, because if you're self-assessing as you're describing, we're going to be able to be more present, show up more positively, be more engaged with the people that we're interacting with. And when I've addressed this, when I talk about it, I talk about being present. If you're looking in your mind at things in the past and not enjoying the present, or if you're planning for things in the future and you're not being present, those are good indicators that something's out of whack. And I like that word harmony that you used earlier. That harmony that we're looking for allows us to actually enjoy the moment. And so that's one of the things that I think is so valuable here. It's beneficial to our clients as we're serving them, the relationships that we're in. And I think it's more healthy for us because our stresses will go down. So I'm liking this. Let's go to bliss. I mean, we don't live to work, we work to live, right? So we're trying to enjoy life. What's bliss?
So, bliss is what I call the maintenance of happiness. And that is for us to find internally joy each day, even if it's just for a moment. But what is it that's going to provide you joy, lift you up during the day? And it's really recognizing the things that provide that energy to you. And it doesn't have to be big things, it can be small things, whatever it is. It could be that that's your hobbies too, and outside of work, or your family, or whatever fills your cup. But it's important to recognize what provides that to you, because in yoga, there's a Sanskrit word called Satchinanda, which is this where I kind of form this bliss part of the equation. But what it means is that you exist. And all day long, we have the day coming at us. And sometimes we forget we exist, that we're outward focused for our clients, for the people that work for us, for our family, all the things we have to get done. And then at the end of the day, we're like, what did I even do today? And then it's just a repeat the next day. And I'm not even having any awareness of my life. And so it's important that we recognize what we need ourselves to fill our cup, because many people will think that's like selfish, or feel guilty if I take that time to really focus on myself. But that is the biggest gift you give to everybody else, is when you do this. And so rather than look to the outside or look to the workplace to make you happy, what can you do yourself to change things around? And I see it all the time with people that I work with, that they initially come blaming their circumstances. And then when they start doing some of the self-work, they're like another person. Their energy's different, because we think we don't have control over things that we do have control over. But many times what is preventing us from actually achieving that is communication. And when communication lacks, then we get in our heads, we have negative self-talk, and we're making assumptions about things that we don't even know that are true. And that's when, we start feeling that drain on ourselves, our energy, and we can hear ourselves being negative. And so those are the times to pop your eyes open and have awareness and say, what would make me happy?
I'm loving this. Happy. That is exactly right. It's an introspective way of looking at life and yourself. It's being mindful. And I really appreciate how you're saying you need to be self-aware of what it is that fills your bucket. We always talk about this bucket, and we sometimes, I think, presume that it's the responsibility of others to fill the bucket. We're just supposed to hold this bucket out there saying, more, please, more. That's not what this is about. We should know where we should put the bucket. The waterfall is over here. Take your bucket and go over to the waterfall and stick it in it and fill it up. And what's interesting is we can also fill our own bucket. We don't have to go to all these other resources to fill the bucket. We have every right to put water in it ourselves. And it's our responsibility, in my opinion, to seal the bucket. Anytime it's getting punctured and picked on because of toxic relationships and situations, we need to be removing ourselves from those situations as best we can, simply because life happens and we need to arm this bucket so it doesn't get punctured so often. And more importantly, take on the responsibility of filling it. So my add to that is we need to be self-aware that we're conscious of what it is that it takes to fill our bucket and pursue or seek those things out. We should be happy. Man's search for happiness is that we should be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really appreciate the fact that you're drawing attention to not just the stresses we're experiencing in business and the balance that we should be finding in our lives, but the bliss that we should be pursuing. So I'm liking this quite a bit. Now, you've written a book just recently. The book is something that I just want to real quickly make mention of here. It's basically Disconnect to Connect. Interesting topic, interesting title. What does it mean to be a connected leader?
So the book is very much a very personal story of my own, and the things, different things that I've gone through in my life and what I've learned over time on how to overcome those things in your life. And really what spearheaded that for me was the many people that might cause those experiences in your life blaming another generation or another person for their behavior. And what I find in human behavior is that we have two options. We either can take accountability or we blame someone else. So, because taking accountability is work, right? And if we take accountability, that means there has to be an action after. There has to be work on that. And so this book is very much about just reviewing your belief systems. Like, where did they come from? The things that we say, the things that we do, that sometimes we're repeating things, but we've been repeating it for so long, we've never actually stood back from it and said, do I believe that? Is that really what I believe? Or am I just repeating what I've always heard? And, just one thing related to the profession and coming back to this discussion that happens all the time is I meet with a lot of firm leaders to talk about culture and how we can shift it. And when I start talking about things like, you can guarantee a 45-hour work week year round, and I'm sure there's people taking a deep breath with me even saying that, the answer many partners will have is, that's not the case. This is just the profession. That is a belief system. That is not the truth. But
Correct.
if we agree into that belief system, then we don't have to action it. We can just keep blaming the world for the pipeline and the retention issues and so forth. Or we can step back, take accountability and say, maybe that belief system served me to this point, but it's not serving me any longer. And so what are the things that I have to do and shift and really grow myself in order to make real change? And real change means that it starts from leadership. And this is where the connected leader concept comes into play, because a lot of times what will happen is the leaders will say to somebody else, fix the culture. Go and put these programs in place or give them raises, bonuses, whatever, and that will fix it. That doesn't fix it. Because if the leaders are not living what the rest of the company is saying, no one buys into it. And no amount of money keeps somebody. So you can keep throwing money at an issue, but as soon as they get recruited for more money, they're going to go. But if they've got a good work life, if they're being treated well, if they're being respected as humans, they could be offered more money and not go, because they don't want to leave the environment that they're in. And so being a connected leader, the way I define it, means that you are individually nurturing people one by one, and it's not a one-to-many push-down environment. that you're understanding what drives each person that you work with and how you create an environment that's safe for them to be who they are, that you're open, that they're open, and you're creating a transparent environment so that everyone can create the work and the career that they desire. And so for that to happen, it takes individual work at the top in order to bring it into the organization and the leaders in the organization propelling that change, not handing it to somebody else and saying, you take it.
As an entrepreneur running a business, we have to embrace the fact that we determine the culture. We define the culture in our organizations. And like you're describing, it's not anything that we can delegate. There are a number of things that at the owner level, you just cannot delegate to other individuals. And I do agree with you. Culture is one of those. You get to establish what that culture looks like, what you value, what you draw attention to, the expectations. So that's something that is, I think, very important for a leader to embrace, that this is something that they get to influence and define. And when you're talking about leadership, one of the things that I also agree with is being a leader, I think oftentimes means that you're breaking the paradigms. You're going into the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
You're disconnecting, as you're describing it, with what the current belief system may be, because you're going to go out there and do something different. And in today's culture, that's what people are looking for, is those people that are movers and shakers, the ones that actually kind of buck the system and create something differently. And within the accounting profession, we are experiencing that, whether it be the work hours that are expected, working remotely, using offshore services. I mean, there's a variety of things that are now disrupting the accounting profession, and it's all essential simply because we're a profession that I think we're not servicing the accounting or the business community as we need to. And in order to do so correctly, we're going to have to change some of these paradigms that we've been working under. So here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to wrap this up. And as I wrap this up, come back to you for a closing thought, just so that you can put a nice little capstone on this. But the thing I'd like to just share for the listeners is this has been an amazing discussion. I was so excited to speak with Amy simply because of her experience, her work history, but also just where she's going and being the thought leader that she is in these various spaces. So one of the things I'd like to start with is an offer. She does have a newsletter. And so for the episode description, or for the listeners, in the episode description, you can find the information to subscribe to her newsletter, where she gives information as it relates to the methods, the B3 method, including business, balance, and bliss. So if you want more information on that and would like to get that regular cadence of information, go to the episode description to sign up for her newsletter. She also has some online courses and such that you can check out and look into. Definitely some things that you can consider as you're running your business. In addition to that, I also want to invite you to, in the episode description, take advantage of the book, Red to Black. It is a how-to guide for accounting professionals to literally work with your clients on that thing that stresses so many out, which is cash flow. It's the thing that most often is experienced in business, where the accounting professional can make such a huge impact and difference. It is the how-to guide for you to actually then implement this in your business, as well as a book called In the Black. It's 9 Principles to Make Your Business Profitable. These are where you're able to apply 9 principles in your company to ensure the profitability of your activities. So definitely want you to take advantage of that and the many other things available there in the free resources. As it relates to the summary, this has been a great conversation. Clearly, Amy has a phenomenal history, having worked at the big players in the corporate world, and then taking that leap of faith to be an entrepreneur. And even though being a CPA is definitely money oriented, she's down in the business essence of what are we doing as it relates to culture and mindfulness and thinking, so that we can have, as she was referring to it, balance and bliss. And I really like the fact that we're getting to that foundational essence of really, why are we doing what we're doing, and how is it impacting us individually, personally? How's our lives as we're going out there and servicing the small business community? And so some of my takeaways from this were clearly the idea of business. It has stresses. There are things that we're all dealing with, and it's something that we need to be ready to address and at least own up to. Balance, we definitely need to find ways that we can handle these situations and stresses. And bliss, we need to be mindful of our needs so that we can be happy. The other thing I enjoyed was the discussion as it related to accounting being akin to the medical profession, that with regards to the business, it is a living, breathing entity. It's something that needs that care. And as we work with our business owner clients, we need to treat them with that bedside manner that they can cherish the relationships that they have with us because we're so integral to their success. Thought those were really insightful perspectives for us to consider as we're running our businesses and working with our clients. So, Amy, what would you like to add as a final thought?
Well, first, I just want to thank you for having me on, and to all the listeners. Hopefully, you have at least one actionable thing that you can take from today's discussion. And just remember that the energy that you create for yourself is contagious. And so, showing up with intention and making sure that you're showing up in the way that you want, so that you can create a better workplace and better relationships with your clients, your family, your friends each day.
I love it. Yep. This is a person business. We need to be personable, approachable. We need to understand that we have to be able to relate to our clients. Definitely a personable thing. So very good. I appreciate that. So for my listeners, here's what I'd like to first of all encourage you to do. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Obviously, this is something that you can get notifications on, and more importantly, hear each and every week as we release episodes for you to actually hear from the experts and address things that are relevant to your building the premier accounting firm. Also, we want to invite you to go to universalaccounting.com. There we have some free resources that you can take advantage of. And more importantly, get access to past episodes of this podcast where you can go check out some highlight reels where we've put together a variety of playlists on a number of topics that range from marketing, selling, pricing, onboarding clients, tech stacks, mental health, and so much more that you can actually binge into as you're working on your business and addressing the specific needs that you have, hearing from the experts, the things that we ought to consider as we're running our businesses. I also want to invite you to GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference for owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses. It's this conference where we put on the stage the experts, individuals that you can hear from as to what it is you should be doing to work on your business. You get to interact with your peers, collaborate, find those relationships that you can have where you're able to better service your clients with the various services that you each offer. And then lastly, it's the staff here at Universal Accounting. You get to meet us. Those are the individuals that are committed to your success so that you can be in business for yourself, but not by yourself, working with Universal Accounting Center. Now, with all that being said, I also want to encourage you, if you like these principles or others or want to discuss them further, feel free to reach out to us directly at Universal Accounting. You can contact us by going to universalaccountingschool.com or calling us at 801-265-3777. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care, be safe, and have a wonderful day.